Hi guys, this is jsnmount.com and I'm here with a handset called Philips Xenium I908. We're here for a full review of this handset that's priced at an affordable rate and it has pretty solid specs for a mid-ranger. It was launched last fall in 2014. It's an octa-core Full HD handset with a big battery. It's affordable once again and the price tag is $220, at least in Europe. As far as the design is concerned, this phone measures 8.8 mm in thickness, it weighs 156 grams and it has a back texture that imitates rubber just a little bit. The facade is uniform, we have a singular glass layer that covers it up and the handset adopts a rectangular format with rounded corners, as you can see. Okay, so we're dealing with a phone that's a bit too long to be a 5-incher. I'm saying that because you may have a hard time using it with a single hand, and I mean having your thumb reach all the areas of the screen because of the phone's big length. Okay, it has good grip, so at least that's solved, and it has a pretty well balanced weight. The face is covered with dragon trail grass for the sake of protection, and at the front we find a discrete earpiece at the top here. The front camera, we got the sensors and the LED notification here next to the Philips logo, and finally we have the 3 capacitive buttons below the display, the home, back and menu button available at the usual places. Now if we move at the back, we find the main camera and LED flash, and then you find the speaker at the bottom. You can also remove the cover, that's a bit thicker than usual. Usually it's simply a layer of plastic. This time the cover also takes care of the edges, as you can see here, so quite a thick cover. Below it you can find 2 regular SIM slots. They're not micro SIMs, they're not nano SIMs, regular SIMs, and at the top above them the micro SD. The battery is non-removable. Put the shell back on, it's rather a shell than a cover. At the top, audio jack and micro USB port. At the bottom, a microphone here. On the left side you have the volume buttons that are quite comfy and offer good feedback, while on the right side we have the on-off button, also with good feedback. Overall the design is okay, maybe the length of the phone may be bothersome for some people. Now as far as the hardware goes, we have a 5-inch IPS LCD screen with a Full HD resolution, and inside the phone you will find a MediaTek MT6592 processor. This one is an octa-core CPU clocked at 1.7 GHz and it uses Cortex A7 technology. The GPU is a Mali 450 MP4 and we also have 2 GB of RAM inside and 16 GB of storage, as well as a micro SD card slot. At the back we find 13 megapixel camera, at the front a 5 megapixel camera, and on the connectivity side there's dual SIM, dual standby here, HSDPA with 21 MB/s downloads, Wi-Fi BGN and Wi-Fi Direct. Okay, so we proceed with Bluetooth 4.0, GPS, FM radio, and in a section we like to call others, we got proximity sensor, light sensor, magnetic sensor and accelerometer. We also tested the battery. The battery in this case, well, it's a lithium-ion 3000 mAh unit. On paper it should provide you with 37 hours of talk time or 45 days of standby. It's a non-removable battery, and in our test that involves HD video playback in a loop with Wi-Fi on and brightness of 50%, we achieved 7 hours and 26 minutes of continuous HD video playback. Frankly speaking, it could be longer. Usually Philips phones have very large batteries. For example, the AllView P6 Energy has 12 hours, we got 7 hours and a half almost. The Huawei Honor 6, 8 hours and 58 minutes, also beats us. However, we managed to beat other budget phones, or better said, affordable mid-range phones like the AllView V1 Viper S4G that has 5 hours and 19 minutes. So overall the 7 hours and 26 minutes should be fine, but not excellent, and certainly not on par with my expectations from a Philips phone. The charging takes place in 4 hours and 25 minutes. It's huge. I have to say it's probably the longest phone charging I've ever experienced. So it takes 4 hours and a half to charge this phone from 0 to 100%. In the settings area, if you go to the battery, you'll see there is a feature called CPU power saving mode that limits the maximum CPU performance in order to conserve battery life and also lower the temperature. Okay, so this is all about the battery. I would say reasonable battery life, but too long charging. Now as far as the speaker and acoustics are concerned, we got here a bit of a stock music player that I'm looking for right now. Inconspicuous design, here it is. This is the stock music player, and let's actually listen to some tunes. Here we go. And now some conclusions. I would say that the experience is reasonably loud, pretty clear, the bass is okay, all notes are heard okay, there's no distortion, and the keyboards are heard just fine. There's no muffling on a flat surface. And as you can see, there's not a big difference between sitting on a flat surface or in the air. And as far as the equalizer goes, sound effects right here, stock equalizer. You can use these presets, you can play with 5 custom channels, there's bass boost, surround sound and preset reverbs if you really want to tweak the experience. Now as far as the headphones are concerned, this is the pair that's bundled with the device. They look and feel a bit cheap, they have a big remote here. And I have to say they're pretty rigid in the user's ear. Also, they're not very loud at the maximum level, and the bass could be described only as so-so. Now, since we have the headphones, we connected them to the audio jack, and we're going to look up FM radio, which is also a stock experience with features like search, speaker and record FM. Now, if you want to tweak settings a bit further, there's audio profiles and these two options, BES audio enhancer and BES loudness, to boost your speaker or headphone volume, and then you can turn off the radio once you're done with the music. Now let's remove the headphones, and I have to mention we have used the decibel meter to test the quality of the speakers, and this is what came out. So at the back we achieved 83.2 decibels, while at the front we achieved 82.1. So we got 83.2 decibels at the back and 82.1 decibels at the front. It's pretty close to the iPhone 6 Plus that has 83.8 decibels, which means that the acoustics are not that bad, especially as far as the speaker goes, while the headphones could be better. Now I want to discuss about the screen. You're seeing here a 5-inch Full HD IPS LCD, 441 ppi, a bit of a fingerprint magnet, as we can well notice. It picks up fingerprints pretty fast and smudges. And we also have a video app pre-installed. It's called Videos. It's basically redirecting you to another app. Now this is the usual test video. Let's turn on the volume. Here we go. So as you can see, the screen is pretty crisp, bright, a bit oversaturated. It has wide viewing angles, as usual for an IPS. And you probably notice something else. The motions are very fluid in this clip, which is actually caused by a special option available on the device. You can go to the settings, select display, and here it is, clear motion video fluency enhancer. Turn it off, get back to the app, and you'll see a totally different experience. Some people may like it with the fluency on, some with the fluency off. It's all a matter of taste. It's more cinematic with fluency on, less cinematic and more realistic with it off. Anyway, the screen is crisp, reasonably bright and a bit oversaturated. It also has RGB stripe pixels that we'll be viewing in a minute now, detailed under the microscope. So let's check out those pixels. This screen uses RGB stripe pixels, and once we use the lux meter, we achieved 281 lux units, which is a bit underwhelming. Usually we test mid-rangers that beat 350 lux, and lately we've tested mid-rangers that beat 400 lux, so it's a bit of a letdown. However, in the day-to-day usage, especially when playing games and watching video, the brightness feels certainly higher than 300 lux, in spite of the fact we theoretically achieved 281 lux. Just for the sake of comparison, a mid-range phone that's relatively similar, the Wiko Rainbow, scores 424 lux, and also a similar phone, Utok Fury, scores 465 lux, while we only score 281 lux. We can also tweak the display a bit more. Aside from the clear motion thing, we have lock screen style, either default or with the video orb with your videos floating on the screen. We got brightness settings here, sleep, daydream, font size and cast screen. So overall an okay display, but it could be just a smidge brighter. Now as far as the camera is concerned, this is a 13 megapixel shooter with a Sony Exmor RS sensor. It's got BSI and autofocus, and you also have a 5 megapixel shooter here for selfies. As far as the camera interface goes, we've got the castle here and we've got the camera here. So I was saying about the UI, on the left side we have all the options that matter. We have a front camera shortcut, we have the flash options here, and we got the capture modes. We got normal, HDR, we got face beauty, panorama, multi-angle, we got the scene mode, auto detection scene, auto capture when smile is detected. Then there's another option, there's consecutive shots, there's the gesture to take shots, this one, and finally there's live photo mode that takes up that makes the viewfinder take up all the screen. Okay, other options, well, we got white balance with a few settings included as well. Let's go further, and we got the bulk of the options here: GPS location, exposure with a few subsettings, color effects, scene modes, white balance, image properties like sharpness, hue, saturation, brightness and contrast. There's anti-flicker, then we got zero shutter delay, voice capture, face detection, self timer, continuous shot, picture size 13, 12 or 8 megapixels or lower, ISO going up to 1600. Then come the video options: electronic image stabilization, microphone, audio mode, meeting or normal, time-lapse interval, video quality, it can be full HD, HD or lower, and that's pretty much it when it comes to the video options. Here you can access the effects yet again. Then we have the shutter button, then we can switch to the video, and then we have the gallery shortcut. Okay, now as far as the zoom is concerned, the phone can do up to 4 times zoom, as you can see it here, and I have to say that the focus is reasonably fast, although sometimes the exposure will change violently for no reason, especially when filming. While the focus is fast, picture taking is not that fast, as you just saw. Okay, now let's actually see the sample we've taken. Clarity is pretty good for a mid-ranger, and lighting is particularly good in this case. Noise tends to appear when you zoom in about 3 times, so I would say this capture done right now is reasonable, but let's have a look at the bulk of the gallery that we've done on a cloudy day. Okay, so camera here, a few dozens of photos, starting with this one. Once again, it was a cloudy day of February, and this is what the shots look like. Let's zoom in for more detail. Takes a bit of a while to get to the noisy parts. We also tried out HDR with pretty good results, although sometimes the image tends to get a little bit whitish. This is the multi-angle shot, which gives you the impression of 3D. Next up, we got a panorama that you can either see like this or like this. The stitching was fast, details are pretty good, although there's a slight sense of image curving here. Next up, we have pretty good colors here, although sometimes they feel a bit exaggerated if you ask me. Another sample color, so red, we got blue and a bit yellow, we got green, we have all the colors that matter, consecutive shots, and they feel just a slightly bit exaggerated and oversaturated compared to my usual captures. I have to highlight again the fact that the level of detail is quite okay for a mid-range phone that costs $220 in some countries. And this time HDR actually worked fine. We got good focus and good white balance. Yet again some pictures with colors, and yet again some colors feel exaggeratedly vivid. We also tried out macro shots on this horse, and I was actually impressed by these macros. And more macro attempts with fine details. So this phone excels when it comes to macros and when it comes to lighting and details, but the colors are a bit too much. Also, if the colors bother you, wait till you see a photo that has only gray and white in it. Somehow it manages to make the exposure a bit strange in these shots, so I would take the vivid colors over the gray shots like this one. It's all white and gray, and some noise appears out of the blue, so give me the exaggerated colors instead of the shots with no soul. Yet another macro, and check this out, regular picture, zoomed in picture with quite good detail considering we actually zoomed in while taking the shot. And that was the photo from earlier, so let's go back to the gallery. I also have to mention the weak shadows. Whenever you're facing a shadow in front of you or taking a capture that involves shadows, you'll be faced with a difficulty because the camera cannot handle it and the shots are created a bit noisy. So if you're in dark, gray, white areas without colors, well, you won't like them too much. If you're taking shots of colorful areas, you'll see that there is a bit of exaggeration, but at least the details are good and everything is crisp. Okay, we have talked enough about the pics. It's time to check out the videos, and for that I'm going to access the gallery app yet again and check out some vids. Let's start with this one. First things first, let's deactivate the fluency options because it may spoil the experience. Here we go again. This one is a full HD sample, 30 frames per second, 17 mega per second bitrate. The format is 3GPP, is not MP4 sadly. I would have to say the acoustics are quite good and colors are also pretty good. I was surprised to see that throughout the filming I didn't have any focus problems and stabilization issues were small, which is a compliment for a mid-ranger. Once again, the colors feel a bit exaggerated, a bit too vivid. I wouldn't say oversaturated because the word is too big for it. It's not extra saturation, just extra vividness. So no focus problems, only slight stabilization problems, nice details. And the thing I noticed is that early on during the video capture and later on when you're finishing the capture, the images tend to feel a bit burnt, just like here. And the exposure goes crazy sometimes, especially when switching frames. But overall the quality is good. Even MP4 good, I would dare to say. And one last capture. Let's see if we can find another video. We got this one here that also involves zooming in to get some extra details. Violent exposure change. And overall pretty much good quality, and even when zooming in not a lot of detail is lost. Okay, so now the conclusion. For a mid-ranger, the 30 megapixel camera is good. I feel that sometimes it's a bit better than my own personal iPhone 5, which is a compliment for this model. I would have to say that this handset is less noisy than the iPhone 5 in some conditions, but its colors are a bit worse. Okay, now as far as the editing goes, once again back to the gallery, once again using those regular options. You can tweak a photo by pressing this. You got a bunch of filters to play with, frames, crop, straighten, rotate, mirror, draw, auto color, exposure, vignette, contrast, shadows, and other things. So we're done with the camera. Now it's time to analyze the performance of the device, starting off with the temperature. Sadly, this phone tends to overheat. After playing the game Riptide GP2, which is a 3D benchmark game, we achieved 44 degrees Celsius and the back of the phone was kind of hot, so there's a bit of overheating here. This is the stock web browser. You can play with Chrome obviously if you want to, but let's see the speed of the stock browser. It's not very fast, it's decently fast. This is our website, gsn1.com, and the keyboard is the stock Android one. Now, as far as the actual phone calling features are concerned, I have to mention this is a dual SIM, dual standby phone. You can only do 3G on one SIM at a time, and the signal is powerful, the calls are loud and clear, We got speed dial, so everything works just fine in the telephony section. Now, as far as the benchmarks are concerned, I decided to compare the Philips i908 with the UTOC Fury and the AllView X2 Soul, because all three of them have 2 GB of RAM, 16 GB of storage, 5-inch screens, and the only difference is the fact that the Fury handset has an HD screen, the rest are Full HD, and also all three of them share the same MediaTek octa-core processor. So let's get started with the benchmarks. The Philips i908 scores 13,342 points in quadrant, while the UTOC Fury scores 13,910 points, beating us, and the AllView X2 Soul 14,654. Next up we got Antutu with a pretty big score of 31,286. Antutu didn't run on UTOC Fury, while on the AllView X2 Soul it scored 27,630 points. We also did an NMark test, and this is what came out. We scored 61.9 frames per second, while the UTOC Fury scored 62.9 frames per second, and the AllView X2 Soul 57.2 frames per second. Velamo is also among the benchmarks. In the HTML5 test we scored 2139 with Chrome, while the UTOC Fury scored 1961 and the AllView X2 Soul 2624. There's also 3D Mark, obviously. We actually perform all of them: Extreme, Unlimited and regular Ice Storm. In Unlimited we scored 7083, while the UTOC Fury scored 6986 and the AllView X2 Soul 7138. Moving even further, there is Geekbench 3 with a score of 439 over 2384, while the UTOC Fury scores 439 again over 2345. Finally, the AllView X2 Soul 445 over 2464. GFX gave us a score of 12 frames per second in the T-Rex off-screen 1080p test, while the other models, well, the UTOC Fury was left at 11 frames per second and the AllView X2 Soul 8.7 frames per second. We also performed a speed test using Wi-Fi. We scored 21 mega per second in download and 22 in upload. We're actually doing quite fine. The UTOC Fury scored 21 and 21 and the AllView X2 Soul 12 and 19. Now we're off to the browser tests. We also performed those, and we got a score of 1276 in browser mark, while UTOC Fury had 1304 and AllView X2 Soul only 818. Finally, SunSpider, where the lowest score wins, we scored 1188, while the rivals score 1213 and 1074 respectively. So overall we beat the other models in 3 out of 10 benchmarks, which is not exactly very impressive. I would have to say that the regular usage of the phone doesn't exactly involve lag. And when I say doesn't exactly, I mean this is not a very fluid UI. It's not the most fluid UI I've seen. As you can see, it's not a very speedy interface, but it's also not laggy, so I would say it has a medium fluidity. As far as the game go, the Untitled Riptide GP2 can run without problem on this handset, obviously. So let's actually see some 3D game graphics. As I said, Riptide GP2 runs fine, although in spite of the fact that the 3D graphics look nice, there is a slight problem with the device's gyroscope, as you'll see in a minute now. And let's see, maybe it's correct in the meantime, fingers crossed. As you can see, the orientation of the racer is kind of strange. Early in the race, he tends to go left a lot, which is kind of odd. I'm keeping the device straight right now, and as you can see, I'm hitting a wall, so there's a slight problem with the gyroscope on this device. Okay, so now we're getting to race properly, and once again it tends to pull to the left side, which is not exactly okay in my book. But the graphics look okay. If the gyroscope problem is fixed, everything should be just fine. Okay, now we proceed further to the software part of the experience. And we're dealing with a handset that runs Android 4.4.2. It's pretty much stock as far as the experience goes. And of course we got some customized icons here. As you can see, if you keep the screen pressed or if you place this button here, you trigger the widgets area. That's once again pretty much stock, as I'm showing you right now. Multitasking is done by keeping the home button pressed and swiping around to close apps. The drop down area holds both the notifications and the quick settings, including a cool glove mode, so if it's winter time and you need to interact with the screen with gloves, you're all set up. The settings area doesn't hold anything fancy. Connectivity settings, device settings, audio, display, storage, battery, apps, location, security, and accessibility, which holds a bunch of interesting settings like receive phone by gesture and smart wake up with a double tap on the screen. Now, as far as the pre-installed apps go, I have good news. There's not a lot of bloatware here, so in the lack of bloatware, that's a good thing. We got a calendar, we got Chrome, we got downloads, Drive, we got email, a file manager, FM radio, gallery, Gmail, Google+, Hangouts, Maps. That's working reasonably fine. Okay, other than that, we also have messaging, movie studio, news and weather. And then we got notebook. It's a note-taking application, very intuitive as the interface shows. And then people, phone, photos, the Play Suite, Play Books, Play Games, Play Store. Then sound recorder, Star Taxi, To Do, videos, voice search, Kingsoft Office, allowing you to work with doc, PowerPoint, XLS, PDF, text and other files, and also with Dropbox integration, and finally YouTube. So this is all as far as the device is concerned. Aside from the gyroscope problem, I would say there's not much wrong with it. It has quite a few pros aside from the cons. So let's see the pros and cons for the Philips Xenium I908. On the good side, the pro side, we got good grip and a solid build. There's an OK battery here that goes past 7 hours of playback. We got OK acoustics. The camera is pretty good in both photo and video. There's no bloatware on board. And I like the fact that we have big SIM slots inside the phone, so people with older SIMs can easily use those. If you have micro SIMs, you probably have adapters laying around. On the con side, the charging time is huge. You can even go past 4 hours, which is kind of huge. There's a bit of overheating. The front side is a fingerprint magnet if you don't take care of it, and the screen could be brighter, plus there's that gyroscope problem that hopefully will be fixed with an update at some point in time. Now let's give this device some grades. For design, I'm going to give it 8.7 out of 10. For hardware, I'm going to give it 9.2 out of 10. And for operating system and user interface, I'm going to give it a 9.2 out of 10 yet again. The final grade for the Philips Xenium I908 is 9.03 out of 10. It's a phone with an OK camera, good speakers, decent battery, and no bloatware on board. Its biggest drawback is probably the gyroscope problem and maybe the huge charging. Other than that, it's an appealing package that's priced just a bit over $200, and considering we have an octa-core CPU inside, enough RAM and a good camera, that's pretty appealing. So we're giving it a 9.03 out of 10 here at gsmdom.com. Bye bye.